Oh, it counts it for you. I forgot.
It's all good. It's all good. Welcome.
Oh, wow. Hi.
We had a fun little test run on the welcome before we actually started recording, and we've been laughing about it.
It's like
Yeah.
it's the equivalent of ruining a surprise for a surprise birthday party on someone else.
Yeah. Yeah, I said surprise before I should have. So, oh well. Today we have a very exciting guest here with us, Aaron, of the ADHD Project. I'll let you introduce yourself, Aaron.
Hello. So again, my name is Aaron. I started the ADHD project because I've got it and it sucks, and I want to help other people live more fulfilling lives when they have it.
Mm-hmm.
One day they threw some pills at me and said, "Here you go, you're on your own." And I tried to fill in the blanks, and from
Yeah.
there, I tried to share all of the blanks that I filled in with all the other people in the world who have ADHD.
Yes, which is an exponential amount. I can only
Yes.
imagine. Yeah, yeah. Colin and I have joked on numerous episodes. Neither of us is formally diagnosed, but I joke. I believe I was raised by someone with ADHD, and so I've adopted a lot of the behaviors. I might have it myself to a lesser degree, but I know, Colin, you've said. I don't know if you've gotten a formal diagnosis yourself, but I know that you were kind of suspecting that was in your wheelhouse.
Yeah, it was just a very quick. Yeah. You probably have it. Let's do some of this stuff, and so I'm just kind of in the middle of trying to figure that out a bit further. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how it goes a lot of times, to be honest.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
when I was maybe 12 or 13, was diagnosed with it as a kid. And then I had medication for like 6 months, gave up on it, didn't really stick with things. And there was this idea that kids just grow out of it. And,
Yeah.
when at 30, I was told, yes, you absolutely still have it. That idea kind of went out the window.
Yeah, for sure. And that's interesting because I know that they're quick to diagnose, or it seems like they're kind of quick to diagnose, especially young males, because like they have so much energy and like it can be disrupting. So it's interesting that they kind of did that in your case. But
Yeah.
then later we're able to confirm like the
Right.
validity and like you are still dealing with this. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was more common back in, late 90s, early 2000s to have that. But really, the
Mm-hmm.
script has been kind of flipping a lot on that lately. It is so incredibly difficult to get diagnosed with ADHD as an adult, at least where I am in Rhode Island. So basically,
Mm-hmm.
I went to a doctor who specializes in this, and I said, "Hi,
Mm-hmm.
I have every single symptom on the list, and I have it constantly 24/7." And she said, "Great,
Yeah.
still need a test." And
Right.
so that was February of that year. This was a few years ago.
Yeah.
And I had to wait on a wait list until August to go to a reputable place.
Wow.
And
Oh my gosh.
I also had to fork over like $2,700 out of pocket that my insurance didn't cover.
Yeah.
And then, only then, did I finally get diagnosed and be able to get treatment and medication that people knew I had. Now, there are lots of fly-by-night crappy places out there where you and your college buddies go just so you can get an Adderall script and flip it on the side, but those
Right.
aren't really the kind of place that are going to give you good, valid information to help you treat your condition.
Real help.
Yeah, and we're seeing that on the other hand of things being so overdiagnosed in the past, or the impression of it being overdiagnosed in young boys, we're seeing it so underdiagnosed in women, especially like teenage to young adult women, because their symptoms are just so different. They don't show up the same way as they do in young boys. And so,
Absolutely.
from my understanding, I'm not a woman, but from my understanding, it's already difficult for women to get medical professionals to take them seriously.
Often.
And then you add a condition that, by the way, the prescription for this is microdosing meth. Yeah, let's make that easy. So, they basically make it as difficult as possible. And it leads to people just not saying anything or not doing anything about it, because it's a shame, because it's really much more than just those hyperactivity symptoms that you see in young boys.
Mm-hmm. I think, like you were explaining, those are the ones that seem to be more outward.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think with women, a lot of the symptoms are inward. And so it's incredibly hard to diagnose when it's not something you see. it's a series of repetitive behaviors over a long period of time. So I can imagine that's quite difficult. So you said you were diagnosed around 12, 13.
Yes, somewhere around there.
Yeah. So is it kind of linked to ADHD? You mentioned that you kind of dropped taking the medication. I feel like that's something with somebody with ADHD would do that. They'd be like, I have to take this every day. Yeah. I can't remember to do this. Yeah.
Yeah, so much for medication being addictive, because I can hardly remember it. I got a schedule, I got 2 timers, all that good stuff. But I mean, the big thing is that people just thought it was a childhood thing, and boys grew out of it. And at 12 or 13, I had so many other things, and so did my parents going on, that I said, you know what, I'm feeling like I'm doing great. And it was kind of like the equivalent of like stopping your cold medicine halfway through it because you feel better. Like, it's still working to make you feel better. You need to keep taking it through to the end. And then, to be honest, now this is the really ADHD thing of me to do, is I kind of completely forgot about it after my teenage years. And like, as I'm an adult, I'm just like, why am I treating my anxiety and it's not getting any better? Why am I, still dealing with these things and there's other stuff clouding? Why do I not think the same way as like people that I know? And like, why is it causing all of these problems? And like, you just kind of feel like you're spinning your wheels. And, not only as an adult, but I see that this is kind of a parallel with women as well, is that a lot of the symptoms are diagnosed based on how it bothers other people, but that's the tip of the iceberg, and the real symptoms and the bulk of everything is really a deeply emotional experience. People think that it's just like, oh, there's a squirrel running by, but honestly, it's like your feelings, your emotions, they start off like it's a relatability thing at first, like you don't relate to your peers or your friends or your family. And then you have a hard time keeping friendships. And then it becomes a self-esteem issue because you feel like, oh, I'm lazy, I can't apply myself. All of these people, like, people like family, teachers, like people you trust that are authority figures as a child telling you, hey, you just need to, focus harder and pay attention. Like, you're so smart, you're not applying yourself. Why can't you just do these basic things? And then it starts affecting all of those relationships too. And it's like, it's a snowball effect, and all of these little things add up, and it really does affect every single aspect of your life. It's not just, not being able to pay attention to a show you're watching. It really kind of undermines everything that you try and do as an adult to lead some sort of functional life. It's got a tinge of this ADHD thing to it. And we have to figure out how to actively manage every single part of your life, which is the complete opposite of what you want to do, which is sit around on the couch and relax because you're so exhausted.
And so on your TikTok, I know you share a lot of like tips and tricks for, this is how you're told how to manage this task, for example. But for somebody with an ADHD brain, they're not able to perform or complete tasks or live a day-to-day life in, we'll say, like a typical way. What would be like the number one thing that has helped you and continues to help others when you share this information?
So
or is
one thing, it's really kind of like a basic, it's more of like how you approach things. So you can't just like will yourself to have more motivation and then do things better. People think like, oh, I have no motivation, I have no interest, I can't get up and do it. But it's not a motivation disorder. It's a performance disorder, more or less. So I have all the motivation in the world, but the problem is my brain is not connected enough to get me to get off my ass and do something about it. So you have to focus on giving your brain what it needs. And the reason that you have a lot of these issues with ADHD is because we lack dopamine, which a lot of people know as like the happy chemical, makes you happy, but it's also the motivation chemical. And if your body needs, X amount of it, and you're constantly here, then all of your body and your brain's resources are going to be focused on trying to get you to where you need to be so you can have a normal functional life. If everybody else is at 10, but perfect is 12, we're at 6. And in order to get to 10, you got to do 10 times as much work as people who need to go from 10 to 12 in order to just get to where they are. And so it's not really like, I'm painfully aware of all of these things that I'm not doing. It gives me anxiety. That's what my therapist and I talk about. It's like, I know that I need to get these things done. But the problem is, inside of my brain, I'll be screaming at myself to do it for 6 hours, but on the outside, it just looks like I'm sitting on the couch, you know? So it's all about finding ways to turn that motivation around to where, like, you have the motivation for it, but how can you get your brain to act on that? And for me, a lot of it comes down to creating habits and routines and structure that put those things in place. Have you guys read the book Atomic Habits?
You have, yeah.
Great book by James Clear.
Yeah. Okay.
So tell me, Colin, what's Atomic Habits about?
It's an easy and proven way to build good habits and break bad ones. It's tiny changes, remarkable results, some might say.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You'll notice that the spine is not creased at all. It's just.
I've given mine away at this point to somebody else who also needed it because I got a copy of it. Yes. But one of the things that they talk about is that a habit is really a science, and habits are also based on dopamine. And there are 4 parts to a habit. There is a cue that tells your brain, hey, if I do this thing, it's going to give me dopamine. Think, an easy example is like gambling. When somebody likes to play the slot machines, you put a quarter in, you get money, and your brain goes, oh, crap, I like that. That's dopamine. Your brain is released. So what happens is that you see the slot machine, and that cue makes your brain crave it, which is step 2. And your brain says, hey, I want to go and do that thing because if I do it, I'm going to get that happy stuff. And then you go and do the task. You put the quarter in the slot machine, cha-ching. And that's the actual habit, the action. So that's step 3. And then step 4 is the reward, where you get money, so to speak. In gambling, you don't always get the reward, but in other things, when it's something like brushing your teeth, you get the reward, you get the dopamine. And your brain starts to recognize these things, and it starts to automate stuff because your brain is always trying to do things with less effort. So if you start to do something consistently, your brain recognizes that it's seeing that part of the pattern. And what does it do? It actually starts giving you dopamine before you've done the task. So when you do the cue, you see the cue, you have the craving, your brain gives you dopamine before you've even done the task. And that's why gamblers will continue throwing money in the machine no matter how much they lose, because they're still getting that fix. Their brain is giving them the reward early, theoretically, without getting the physical reward. But if you can find out how to fit those 4 steps into something that you're trying to do with ADHD and make a habit or a routine out of it, you are now, rather than relying on, random willpower and internal motivation, which is just not going to happen, you're relying on science to give your brain what it needs. So like real life story, have had issues with being able to brush my teeth regularly. Like, I know I need to do it. I know I've had teeth problems because of it. Like, I have my teeth, but at the same time, if I didn't start doing something about it at the beginning of the year, I may not have had them for much longer. So what did I do? I said, I am going to start becoming the kind of person who brushes my teeth, and I'm going to leave a cue right by the sink and put it out there where I can't miss it. I'll put it, if I have to turn the knob, my toothbrush is sitting on that knob. You know what I mean? It's physically in my way. And then you start little by little, the more you do it, your brain starts to see all of this evidence building up, and it says, hey, we're going to get dopamine if we do this. And not only that, but like, we're the kind of person who brushes our teeth, aren't we? Yeah. You know what? I think I should do that. And whether you consciously realize it or not, you start to become that sort of, you start to build that habit into your routine. It becomes part of who you are and something you identify with. And when you can get something to be subconsciously identified with part of your identity to your brain, then now you can't stop doing it. And now I brush my teeth. Like, if I'm on vacation and I forget my toothbrush, I'm like, I got to go to CVS today. I got to go to the front desk and get me a toothbrush, because if I miss this, I'm going to lose all of this. Now it's the anxiety. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can't let this fall off, because once it goes off the rails, it's so much harder to build it back up.
Right.
Yeah. Starting from ground zero. Yeah. Yeah.
Was sorry, go ahead, Jenna.
No.
I'm going to be the kind of person that brushes their teeth. Was that part of Atomic Habits, right?
It was.
Yeah. So I did read like half the book. I just got to put that out there. Yeah. But yeah, it's a really
halfway through. Yeah.
One of the things that I struggle with is, like, you talk about making it impossible to not brush your teeth.
Yeah.
I'll see my toothbrush and I will knock it off the thing to wash my hands or whatever, and then just be like, oh, I should brush my teeth. Maybe
Welcome to having ADHD.
Well, no, and that's my point is like, what's the actual? Because for me, I can set up, I can reframe things in my brain. I haven't read all of Atomic Habits, but I have read The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, which is another really good one. Well, I understand all this, but at the end of the day, I just sit there. I'm like, I know I should, but I'm not going to.
There's a really good trick that I use for this, to be honest, and it is right from Atomic Habits. So, like, he does talk about how, like, the first step, like, you can change your results, but if that's not like part of who you are, who your brain identifies with, you're not going to stick with it. You'll brush your teeth for a week, for 2 weeks, and then you'll say, yeah, whatever, and you'll knock the thing off. But you need to do 2 steps back and start thinking about changing from an identity level. You know, you need to start identifying with, I am the kind of person who brushes my teeth, or I'm becoming that kind of person. Because how does your brain know what your identity is? It's from evidence. It looks back and it says, like, all right, it's been 32 years and this, can I swear on this show?
Oh, yeah.
We'd prefer you.
It's been 32 years and this motherfucker has more than 10 times. Like, you know, and your brain sees that. And so obviously, after a week, it says, dude, this is not who we are. Like, cut the shit. We're not brushing our teeth anymore. So I literally have this conversation with myself like 50 times a day. It's not just about brushing my teeth, but I see it and I say, you know what? I really don't feel like doing it. And I say to myself, all right, you don't feel like doing it, but you are becoming the kind of person who brushes your teeth. And what would that kind of person do in this situation? That kind of person would brush their teeth. And today, do I want to vote for becoming that kind of person, or do I want to vote for staying who I was and my teeth falling out of my head? And look, I'm not going to say it works every time, because it doesn't. But more often than not, it does. And if you can manage to do that, like half of the time, your brain after 6 months is going to look back and say, wait a minute, maybe half the time I've been brushing my teeth, I think I might actually be starting to become this kind of person. It's one of those things where it's like a snowball again. As it builds, it gets easier and easier, and you build more and more consistency, and it's less and less effort. I'm not going to say it's not effort and it's not a struggle. Like, you really have to make a commitment to wanting to do it. And that's why I say really you should just work on one thing at a time. Like, you know, I have a pretty solid morning routine and bedtime routine and like all of these things, but it has taken me, like, I got diagnosed at 30 and I am 32 and a half. And I still am like maybe 20% of the way to where like I want to be with some of these habits and things like that. And like, I'm not on TikTok pretending that I have everything perfect. I'm telling everybody, like, look, this works for me. Like 60% of the time, it works every time. But the more you do it, the closer you get to actually being where you want to go. Because like, it's not about perfection. It's about consistency. I don't work out every day. I managed to do it 3 days a week. And I'm already a lot less than I used to weigh at the beginning of the year, even though I'm not perfect at it.
Yeah. It's, I think you have to start perceiving it as, this is going to be a lifelong, which can be
this
really
is who
overwhelming.
I am, Mom.
Yeah, it can be really overwhelming.
Not a phase.
It can be so overwhelming for some people to have the concept of like, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. So yes, I think if you break it down into the today, you know, I'm a person who is going to be the kind of person who brushes their teeth, for example. It's like the one step at a time kind of thing. And I think
can even go broader with it. You can say, I'm going to become a healthier person. You know, and that's kind of what I did at the beginning of the year. You know, my physical and mental health, my fiance and I decided that was our number one priority. So this entire year, it's, well, I'm becoming that kind of a person. Brushing your teeth is part of that. Going to the gym is part of that. Not eating 3,000 calories directly out of the fridge at 11:30 before you go to bed is part of that, you know? Oh, did I just call you out, Colin?
Oh, I'm feeling attacked. Oof. Ooh.
And that, it's funny you mentioned that. I feel like we started intermittent fasting, my husband and I, and it's been a big help for those kinds of things where I'm like, no, I'm not the kind of person, I don't say this, but in other words, I do, who eats snacks after supper. So that's been a big one.
I've given up on
Sorry,
trying to not be that kind of person, so I just only buy healthy snacks
now.
You know what? That's another hack, we'll say. Like,
designing your environment. Hack. Also straight from the book.
Ooh, designing your environment. I like that. That's a good way of putting it.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you like, people use this, and look, please don't think that I'm like a workout or a physical fitness guy. Like, I just want to not die while I'm walking around in some foreign city on vacation. But like, physical fitness people use this stuff all the time. They're like, well, look, if you need to do something like that, you need to really commit, and then you need to think about like, what do I need to get out of this? And you need to put in the right inputs for those outputs.
Okay. Like, set yourself up for success.
Your environment is part of that, you know?
Yeah.
So like, if you go to Planet Fitness, your inputs are like, I go to Planet Fitness, so judge me all you want, but like, there's people who look like me at Planet Fitness. There are not as many like jacked bodybuilders at Planet Fitness, but the folks who do want to become like jacked bodybuilders, they go to like the Edge or like whatever these other gyms are, because they surround themselves with people like that, and they're trying to get the right inputs, just even subconsciously, so that way they can have the right outputs. Like me, I couldn't give two shits about being jacked. Again, I'm just trying to not die while I'm walking around on vacation. But like, if you set up, you know, this office that I'm in, it does not have video games in it. It does not have a fridge. It does not have like all of the things that distract me from staying focused in it, because if it were, I like, it's like putting a kid in a candy store who's diabetic. Like, why would you ever do that? You wouldn't. That's stupid. So why would you set up your environment for failure?
No, that's so I don't want to say relatable, but I feel like if you're setting yourself up for success, like, that's such a huge part of the battle. And like, you're more likely to reach your goals, or like you said, you know, continue to live the lifestyle that you are coaching yourself to live in that way. There was something you mentioned a couple minutes ago, and it was in the email. Hang on. Constant active management. Okay, so the constant active management, I feel like this is a big part of it. Already mentioned it like in our conversation already, but I feel like, so how do you prevent getting burnt out or feeling burnt out? Because like you explained, you know, if your dopamine is already low, how do you not allow these things to deplete you further?
I mean, no, like, I'm not great at it, but really it's kind of the same answer as every, you know, as what people will tell you about a lot of stuff, is like, you kind of have to pace yourself. You have to go little by little. And like, that's something that I have a tough time with, because like, I can get focused on things. It's just sometimes I focus on them too much. You know, it doesn't, ADHD isn't not being able to focus. Sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes it's, I can only focus on this thing that's right in front of me. And that gets really tough. Yes, absolutely. Like, I say that I have like logic brain and I have gremlin brain. And like, logic brain is the me who's here talking to you right now and is like aware and like in the present moment. Like, if you meditate or anything, like you talk about being present, that's logic brain. But gremlin brain is the part of me that, like, when I drift off and I'm just like randomly thinking about like the dinner I'm going to make after, and I'm, you know, I have a pen in my hand and I'm like mid-sentence writing something, like, that's gremlin brain is taking over. And so like, trying to stay in active awareness brain, logic brain all of the time is fucking exhausting, because it's so much effort. And that's the number one most reported symptom of ADHD, is not forgetfulness, it's fatigue. Everybody is fucking tired, dude. And it's because we have to invent all these systems and things like the planner and everything. And this is, you know, my shameless plug for it will come later, but like, legitimately, I go through and I plan. I'll put it on the video here, so if you're only listening on audio, tough shit. But
the ever compassionate Aaron Frank, ladies and gentlemen.
I'm letting gremlin brain take over now.
Hey, here we go.
I go through all of like every single hour of my day, and I put like what I'm going to work on in that part of the day. And there are parts of the day that just says break, or that say nothing, or that say go pet the cat. Like trying to, we always want to go, 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 or we want to stop, stop, stop. Like it's very hard for those of us with ADHD to like visualize time and like be able to see the passage of it and like plan how we're going to pace ourselves through the day. Like we get these bursts of energy, and it's all about trying to like wrangle those in when you have them. So I know at this point, after tracking it every day since the beginning of the year, like when I'm more productive and when I'm not. So like I know that I am not getting probably anything done between like 7 and 8 p.m. Like that's, eat dinner and watch TV time. And like I've got to get whatever important stuff done there beforehand. So I know that I am pretty damn productive first thing in the morning. As much as I hate to admit that I've become a morning person, like if I get up and there's nothing pulling my attention, I've just taken my meds and had my first coffee, like I'm on a roll. That's when I get most of my work for the ADHD project done, is like between the hours of 5:30 and 7:30 in the morning, which sounds ludicrous to people, but I mean it is what it is for me. I didn't want to admit it, but here we are. But then I have a day job and I have to work that. And when I'm working at home, part of the way that I can do that is like work is a break from home stuff and home stuff is a break from work stuff. So like when I'm focused on work, my head is in making sure, I send the right notes to people. I send the right messages. I'm looking at accounts and things the right way. So all of that is like different brain function than like planning the wedding and chores and doing the dishes and mowing the lawn. So like I can mindlessly mow the lawn. I just have to make sure I plan when I'm going to do it. So if I take my lunch at 12 to 12:30, I will go out there and start mowing, and then I'll let gremlin brain happen for like the half hour that I'm mowing the lawn. Like I have music in my head, in my ears. Like I put my headphones on. I'm thinking about whatever. I'm off in la la land, as long as I can just mow the lawn and get some physical distraction and activity. When I go back to work, I'm not like distracted by thinking about quite as many of those things, because I gave myself time to sort of let gremlin brain run free,
So carving out that time to not be on, we'll say, would be like essential in helping you avoid
absolutely
burnout.
It's balance with everything, that's one thing that I've learned more and more. And it's like you gotta, like, there's tough things that I've had to learn about myself. Like all of my life, I've never thought of myself as a morning person. Hated getting up in the mornings, could not drag myself out of bed. But I've also always had a really tough time sleeping because, anxiety, ADHD, like my head hits the pillow at night and my mind doesn't stop. And as soon as I wake up, it doesn't stop either. Like it's going, So what happens is I said, you know what, if I'm already going to sleep like shit anyways, then I'm going to do it on purpose and take advantage of the time. So like some people will call me crazy, but I sleep like maybe 5 hours a night during the week. And then one night a week on the weekends, I sleep a solid 8 hours to make up for it. And like, I know that math doesn't really work out like that, but like I go to bed at a certain time. I have a little routine. I go to bed and then I wake up at 5. And because I'm like compressing that sleep time into the shorter period, I was only getting 5 hours anyway. It's just that I would wake up 4 times and have like an hour of awake time in the middle of the night. And so by changing my routine and becoming the kind of person who wakes his ass up at 5 in the morning, I've actually regulated my sleep schedule a lot better. And when I sleep on the weekends, man, I crash hard. Like I am lights out for a solid 8 to 9 hours Saturday nights. And it really helps. I wake up Sunday, we go to the beach or something, have a nice relaxing day. And like, that's the other thing too, is that you can't be all go, go, go. You have to make time for the not go. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's interesting. I don't want to say it's an interesting perspective, but I think somebody with like a typical brain, we'll say, who can just go, go, go all the time might listen to this and be like, what do you mean you need a break? But I think it's important to recognize that in each other, because I feel like if you're planning something with friends or doing some sort of social event or something like that, there's going to be a whole plethora of different kinds of people who operate differently. And so, like I'm just thinking,
even among people with ADHD, like a few of my very close friends have ADHD as well. I mean, we kind of flock together, but like they're very different than I am, you know? Like I put a lot of my excess energy into like my side business and my work in the morning. A lot of them, like, I met a lot of friends through playing in a band, and like one of my very good friends, she also plays in a band, and like that's really her outlet, and she spends so much of her time and energy doing that. And when she needs to rest and recover, she's dead to the world too. You know, even among us, like some of us, it's social activity. Some of us need to be alone. You know, for me, it's just me and my fiance. But it's even among ADHD people, it's all so different, and it's like you can't have a one size fits all solution.
Yeah. And anyways, my thought was leading into like, I hope we can be a bit more compassionate for others and recognize like it affects people differently. It will present differently. People will require different things to function. So like on an individual basis, I think we should be a little bit more compassionate.
Absolutely. I mean, everybody's fighting some kind of battle, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, anybody who says they're not, I think is just in denial.
Or they were born into like a wealthy family and have nothing to worry about. But, you know.
Oh, except, you know, seeking the love of their parents who are just chasing dollar bills. Just kidding. My family's poor.
You're like, I don't know anything about this.
Yeah. No, I was loved.
I was loved as well. Either.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, I think it's like, it's just interesting to see how different everybody is with or without it. Like there's always just different perspectives and you really never know.
Yeah. But I feel like these are all good tools for everyone. You know, like it's, I feel everyone is busy. Everyone is tired and everyone's dealing with their own problems, and they tax people differently because people are different and their situations are different. So yeah, I feel like recognizing that the only way you're going to solve any problem in your life is a dedicated approach to that solution is the only way you're going to succeed. And that's something you've mentioned a few times so far tonight is you can't just say that I want to do it. You can't just say I want to be the person that does this. You have to also acknowledge that you've made an agreement. I can't just say this out loud. I have to say it and mean it and recognize why I'm doing it. And it's the acknowledgement of that reason behind the statement that gets you to follow through with the activity, vice just saying it. And I didn't recognize that until really just having this conversation with you tonight, was because I have these conversations in my head all the time. Like, oh, you should just get up at 5 and go do a workout because you won't have any other time during the day. And then the alarm goes off and I'm like, just a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And because I say, I'm going to be the person who wakes up at 5. Well, today I don't feel like being that guy, but I really should be saying you're going to be the person who wakes up at 5 because you're trying to do these, you know what I mean? And just have a bit more
picture.
Yeah.
You got to be intentional about things. You know, it's like so much of what we do as ADHDers is like being kind of pulled to whatever like feels strongest for us, which is like part of the condition. And like everybody has some of that. Like, yeah, it's pretty obvious. Everybody would rather sit around and pet a dog than like go do physical labor. Like that's an easy one.
Yeah.
But, you know, at the same time, like we face this with every single decision of every single part of every single day. So you have to start to think about like, well, all right, I can't possibly do all of it. And if I can't, I mean, even if I couldn't do it all at once. So you have to be intentional about what you're doing and where you're going and really look at those one things and focus all the time. And again, I'm not great at it. Like it's so easy to lose sight of things and get pulled to different things, especially when like life is tough, especially as an adult with like responsibilities and a house and a job and a wedding coming up. Like there's just so many things. And I have definitely let people down. I've let myself down. I've failed. I've missed things. I've like absolutely messed up so many times, but that is the only thing that keeps me going is knowing that like, all right, next time I'm going to be better. Like next time she's going to ask me and I'm going to remember to make the damn phone call about the reservation and she's not going to have to ask me twice, you know, like my whole goal is just to try and get improvement 1% better every day, a little bit by little bit. And just eventually through focusing on the process, you make the progress on your own. And I am by far not the first person to say that. Every third CEO on Facebook is saying that right now. But at the same time, it really is true in a lot of ways, because if you're not committed to making that progress, then it's not going to happen. And you can lose sight of it, but that doesn't mean you just let it go. You have to get back to it. And there is a place for motivation. I know I said it's not a motivation disorder, but like I have my reasons why I do things. I have a life I want to live. I have a certain, place that I want to be. And if I ever want to get there, and if I want to live up to what I've promised and given expectations to my family and the people who count on me, then I need to follow up and do this. And it's a tough thing to connect one to the other, but that's really the game of life, I guess.
That is a huge part of it. And like having the knowledge that you have, I feel like you have like you've done a lot of research, you've done reading, things like this. Like you're equipping yourself with the tools that you need to do this. Walk me through a little bit of how you came to like want to create the ADHD project and what it looked like getting that together and what it is now versus when you start.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was a lot of questions. Sorry.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good.
Tell the story.
So, I mean, at the beginning of this year, I knew that we had a lot coming up, and I knew that I needed a system. And I started honestly just looking for like planning methods and like ways that I could learn the skills and tools that like nobody teaches you. You hear that cliche stereotype like, oh, pills don't give you skills. It's like, all right, cool. Where do I get the skills? And it's just crickets. You know what I mean? Like nobody knows. Yeah, find it, and like, Attitude Mag is great, but at the same time, like it's just a magazine with a million different articles. It's not like one system or plan or anything. So I went around and I went to Etsy because at the time I was running an Etsy shop on the side, and I literally bought like 10 different digital downloads of ADHD planners, and I took the best pieces from all of them, and like it started out kind of like a piece of paper like this, and I would print out stacks and stacks of these things, and like I made my own in Photoshop or whatever, and I came up with a system. I had like a little daily intentions, a way of prioritizing my list. I would say like these are must do items, these are could do, these are like do them later. I would track my habits like it says in Atomic Habits, and I would schedule out or time block my day. And I came up with all these and I put them together, and it actually started working. And I said, all right, well, now what do I do with, everybody says, break down your projects into smaller pieces. I said, great. How? Crickets again, So like I went through and I bought a handful more, and like I probably wasted hundreds of dollars, like with all of these different things. But I guess it wasn't a waste in the long run because I finally put together something that actually worked for me. Yeah. And I've been through a lot of things in my life, and without getting into too many details, I really wanted to do something that kind of like made a positive impact and tried to help other people. And I had been on social media for a bit, and I had been thinking of businesses to start myself. And I said, well, what am I doing selling silly t-shirts on Etsy when that's not really what I'm about? Like what I'm focused on now is trying to manage my daily life and my ADHD better and come up with a system. So I did step 1, I did the identity change. Step 2 is the systems change. And if you do those 2 right, you get to step 3, which are the results, the outcomes change. And that's all lifted right from Atomic Habits. Thank you, James Clear. But at the same time, like now that I found a system, I felt like it was like my responsibility to share it with other people. And I thought maybe I would make a couple of bucks. And like to this point, I'm not like, obviously I still have a day job. It's not like it's financially supporting me yet at this point. I hope that I can do this full time, but I put this all together into a book. I wrote an intro on it, and I started sharing it with people, and people would say, hey, this worked for me too. And, it started to relate. And like, I started getting like people following me and like listening to what I had to say, like way more than I thought I ever would. Like I had like 700 or 600 people following me on TikTok in January. I had 60,000 at the end of March. And I was like, what in the actual, like, I was blown away by it. You know what I mean? 'Cause, like, I'm 32. All right. TikTok is like new for me. I'm not, as cool as I was a few years ago, as much as it pains me to say it.
I feel you, buddy.
Like this is not, hang out at the skate park at the mall, like Vans era of my life. This is like life here. So
very different.
I was like, all right, if people are liking it, I read that TikTok was easy. What TikTok prioritizes is good content. If people like it and watch it, they will show it to more people. And just through sharing these things, I found that there were so many people who wanted it and needed it. And there are a lot of other great content creators, not just on TikTok, but everywhere with ADHD that have really awesome stuff like Connor DeWolf and Kobe Watts and those guys. And like, I get a lot from watching their videos. But one thing that a lot of other folks didn't do is say, hey, I relate to you. Here's what we do about it. You know, a lot of these folks are relatable and you see their content. You're like, man, that's me too. And it helps you understand yourself better. And that's kind of what made me go down the path of ADHD myself. Like when I was first getting diagnosed, because I saw videos online and I related to them and I said, hey, maybe I have this. And there's I would never take away anything from any of those guys.
Wait.
But at the same time, I wanted to help you actually do things. You know what I mean? Not just relate to you.
I feel like that would be the funniest sketch in the world is you going to your doctor asking if you have ADHD and he looks at you like, we've been over this. We discussed this years ago, dude.
Forgetting it.
I picture that in my brain, and while you were talking, I'm sorry I couldn't.
No, it's great. That's great. Honestly, I would do that. I would do that. If you ask my fiance, she'll tell you, like, you know, I will ask her the same thing a couple of times, and she'll be like, yeah, we definitely we talked about something different, but if you want, now, great.
I don't like how that gets thrown back at you though, because there's those moments where you're like, I swear to God, you didn't say that, and she's like, I for sure said it, and then she's giving you that look like, you know why I think I'm right.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's wrong.
Dude, you spend your whole life like being made to feel like shit for this kind of stuff. And then like you make an honest mistake and you get that anxious feeling in your stomach and you're like, oh my God, I've destroyed her whole week. And it's in reality, like I threw out the peanut butter she didn't want thrown away. And now we can't have peanut sauce with dinner. So it's my own fault, but it's a $5 who cares kind of mistake. And like dealing with the anxiety and stuff and the feelings that come with that. Well, my therapist has her work cut out for her.
I feel like growing up too. I mean, like I think ADHD isn't a bad thing. I think it's like I said earlier. Everyone's got things that they're learning to manage and deal with, and whether it's ADHD or PTSD or abandonment or divorce or death, whatever. Like everyone's trying to navigate some new issue. And in the whole time I was saying all that, I can't remember where I was going with it. I'm back. Is that, you know, like I have a strong compulsion to want to please people. And I think a large part of that is just by virtue of our education system. Everything's tests and exams and homework and all, you know, your parents and your friends and everyone's, you know, what mark did you get and blah, 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 blah. And you're like, holy fuck, I could give two shits about any of this. And but your conditions from a young age to be like, really
important to everyone.
You did it the way I asked you to do it, and you did it the right way. So here's my approval. And now you spend your whole life going, we disagree on something. Oh fuck, I'm a terrible person. I can't believe I feel like it's so bad. It's the worst feeling in the world.
It's a compulsive reaction. Like you can't help it, even when you know, like logic brain knows that it's silly. You know what I mean? Like. Marissa does not care that the peanut butter is gone. She was upset for like 30 seconds and we're over it now, you know, but at the time, at the time I felt like I just slashed the tires on her car. You know what I mean? Like I felt like I did the worst thing in the world. And like, I'll go catatonic for like 5 minutes. I'll just like shut up and I'm just like staring at myself in my own disgrace. And then like, I got to snap out of it and finish making dinner, you know, but like, that's the reality of it. It's not really about being forgetful. It's about the thoughts and emotions surrounding being forgetful. It's about all of the other things that go into it. So it's like, it's a shame that it's called, you know, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, because in reality, it should be called unregulated emotion, people pleasing, and insane anxiety disorder, while also not being able to forget and being hyperactive. Like there's just so many more things that go along with
it. And it
multifaceted. Yeah.
Yes.
And it presents itself differently for like not everyone will have some symptoms of ADHD. Everyone does these things all the time. But people with ADHD too don't always have the same kind of ADHD.
Right. That's very true.
Yeah.
And we also deal with it constantly, not just sometimes.
That's true too. I had a question for you though. because for all intents and purposes, you were diagnosed as an adult because you essentially forgot, which is probably the best thing I've heard in a while.
Yeah, it's kind of great.
I love it. I think it's perfect. I recently just saw a video about a gentleman who was talking about, when you're a child and you're diagnosed with ADHD, you're allowed to, get in on the ground level and build those habits and those frameworks and that understanding. And I know that there's a big, influx of newly diagnosed adults with ADHD, and it's probably just a large part of, social media connecting people to these ideas and people recognizing them in themselves and then realizing that the things that they've been dealing with their whole lives and the coping mechanisms that they've built were for something completely different than they'd thought. So his thought was, it's not just about diagnosing the ADHD and moving on. It's about diagnosing the ADHD and addressing, the past behaviors that have been built as a result of living undiagnosed with ADHD. So I guess my question to you is what's your experience sort of in that realm? And if you've had any kind of experience, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy. And like, I agree with what you say. It's like, at this point, I love when people say like, oh, all these people have ADHD. No, ADHD wasn't around when I was younger. Now all of a sudden everybody is like, no, people didn't all of a sudden have ADHD. People have been running around undiagnosed, untreated, having no idea what they're doing and feeling like shit 24/7. Now they finally got a diagnosis of what was there all along to help them. You know what I mean? So it's like, my experience with that is like, there was a lot of unlearning that I had to do. There was like, you think that when you get diagnosed with a lifelong condition that you feel upset or like depressed or that you have to do it. I was so relieved. I was like, thank God I'm not just a piece of shit. Like, thank God I'm not terrible at life. You know what I mean? Like, you think that you're just so bad at everything.
There's an explanation for all these things that I have felt like badly about because you probably felt like you weren't performing in the way that you were supposed to. And the reality is that you're not capable of performing in that structure. You have to create your own.
Yes.
Well, I had no idea that I had no idea that there's also other sorts of named symptoms that go along with ADHD, like rejection dysphoria.
Right.
I thought that had stuff to do with like my childhood and shit. It had nothing to do with my childhood. It was the fact that I have ADHD. I was like, oh wow, that's just like a whole lot less introspection I have to do now. This is incredible. Wow.
Now breaking the habit of doing that introspection. Now that's a different conversation.
Yeah. Well, now I don't have to. Now I can be like, oh, why are you sad? Well, I know it's because it's just this whole mess of emotions. And then it's easier for my logic brain to be like, hey, gremlin brain, you tried. Let's just go back in the cage for a few more minutes and you can try again later.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that.
Yeah. It's interesting, and I don't know if we'll hear more about it or if we'll continue to like hopefully learn more. Like as the knowledge base grows, I feel like the support has grown as well. So people like you are able to reach different audiences and like talk to individuals and offer them support and actual, I don't want to say actual help, but like you said, your goal is to give them tools and help them build the habits that they need to build to feel more fulfilled and things like that. I just wanted to make sure that you had feel like you had explained your platform adequately.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And like my whole goal is to show you like, hey, this is what I'm doing and what helps me. And if it can help you, this is how it works. I have done the research. I've done trial and error. I have messed up so many things. Like, please, somebody learn from this. Please, please use what I've learned. And then, I would love to be able to do this full time. So like, I would love to be able to take this into a full-time business and do nothing but help people with their ADHD. And so like all of these little things are hopefully, will be able to help me get there. But at the same time, even if not, I'm happy to do this even just on the side because it helps people. And that's what it's all about, I think, at the end of the day.
There's a sense of fulfillment.
Yeah,
from that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And like, if I want to help people lead more fulfilling lives, what's going to make me feel like I have a fulfilling life? You know, my dream would be to travel around the country in an RV with my wife and my cat, and you know, post videos on TikTok and help, you know, maybe even coach people with ADHD. It's going to be a lot to get there, but you got to start somewhere, and it's all about the progress and the consistency. And like, even if I never get there, it will still be worthwhile. Do you guys like Star Trek? You watch Star Trek at all?
I see like the newer movies and stuff, but yeah,
it's great. If you don't know, that's even better. So there's a character in Star Trek, in the Next Generation, which is like the fun one from like the 80s and 90s. That's like, you know, not the super old, like, you know, Captain Kirk one, but like the Jean-Luc Picard and Patrick Stewart one. So there's this character, his name is Data, and he's an android. And I've always made
Brent Spiner.
Brent Spiner. He's the man. He's the best actor in that show. But so like, I've always thought that he represents like neurodivergent people, you know, maybe autism spectrum, maybe ADHD, stuff like that, because like, he's an android and he is 10 times faster, 1,000 times smarter. Like, he is literally everything that a person would wish they would be to the max. And the only thing that he cannot do is feel feelings. He does not have emotion. He doesn't know what it's like. And because of that, he feels like he doesn't understand humanity. And that kind of sounds like what I experience. You know, I experience everything in my life different. I'm pretty creative. Like, I live outside of the box. I do stuff that people like are, you know, they don't have the stomach to go and start a business and try and help people with stuff. Like, not to toot my own horn, but like, I'm terrible at other things, you know, like I don't understand sometimes, you know, how to connect with certain types of people or different things in my life and thought patterns. But the one thing that he has always tried to do is get better and try and understand humanity better and try and know what it's like to feel and live within the confines of his limitations to still feel that. And there's this one episode where he creates like a child android, and it's actually it's like one of those where it's like so bad it's funny. Like,
that's so creepy.
Yeah, it's very weird. Like,
love me.
Star Trek is like high camp, and like, if you aren't into that, don't watch it. But like,
gotcha. Okay.
This episode, you know, she's talking to him, and she says, you know, I see these people, and just like you, like I can't ever feel love. How do I know what it's going to be like? And he says, well, you know, we have to accept our limitations. And she goes, well, then why do you always try to be more like humans when you know you can never get there? You know, doesn't it just remind you that you're not complete? And he says something that I will never forget for the rest of my entire life. And he goes, I thought about that as I've tried to become more human until I realized that it's the struggle itself that is the most important. And it does not matter that we will never reach our ultimate goal. The effort yields its own rewards. And like, think about that. This dude is an immortal android who knows he's the smartest thing that's ever lived. He 100% will never, ever be able to feel like humans do. Never will he be able. Like, my brain is never going to not have ADHD. But we must try and strive to be more and to be better, because along the way, the effort will yield its own rewards that we never even thought were possible. And like, I'm finding myself every single day finding rewards from this whole project that I've done, all of the things that I've learned, that even if I never get to where I am, or where I want to be, I'm 1,000,000 times better than I was, you know, a year, 6 months, 2 years ago. And it's all because the effort yields the rewards. And that's like what I was talking about at the beginning. It's not about perfection. It's not about getting to the goal. It's not about never missing a day of brushing your teeth. It's about being consistent and persistent and having more good days than bad days, more logic brain days than gremlin brain days, because that's what's going to get you the rewards, whether or not you actually hit the goal.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. Yeah.
I was going to say I really like that spin on the message too, because, you know, Jordan Peterson, a very similar message, but or among his many, but it's more dire. It's more, you know, to live is to suffer. And you basically just got to get on with it. But I like the idea that it's not just the suffer, it's the struggle, but it's the I don't know, the nobility of the struggle, or the pursuit of just doing it is what's important, and not just avoiding every single thing and accomplishing nothing, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, that is the human experience, right? If you're trying to figure out what it's like to be more human, it's struggling to try and figure out what the hell you're doing out here. Like,
struggle bus.
The older I get, the older I get, the more I realize that like everybody is just out here trying to figure this shit out the best we can. Whether it's your parents, you, your friends, your kids, everybody is just trying to figure it out. And like we all have to try and figure it out on our own terms, at our own pace, in our own lives. And whether you have ADHD or not, like your struggle is going to be unique to you, but that's the thing that we all have in common. You know, like I'm really good at certain things that my fiance is not, but she's amazing at some things that I literally like. Oh my God, the way that this woman plans things, I could never even imagine like keeping this much information in my brain at once. I don't think there's enough space in there for it. But like then there's other things where it's like I see things like when I'm putting things together, like spatial things, like I can guesstimate and measure things.
Yeah.
Like she doesn't quite always have that awareness with stuff. So it's like, you know, we balance each other, yes, but it's like just between the two of us, there's enough of it. Can you picture that with strangers, with the three of us on this call, with 10 people in a room? You know, so many differences.
Yeah.
I said something interesting to you were mentioning space in the brain. I was like, I feel like I need to store like a terabyte of information in my brain, but I've only got like 32 gigs. So I need to like constantly be going through my files and like delete this isn't as important, get rid of that, so that I can then upload the information that I need for that day and then do the same thing every single day. Apparently this is also like being a mom is a big part of it.
I'm sure.
They say my doctor told me if I still feel like I have these like thought processes and things like that, if my brain is still working like this when my kids are like 5+, she's like, we'll reevaluate then. But I guess there's a period of time when you become a parent, your brain functions similarly to those with ADHD. So
like the ADHD brain fog.
We all we potentially all get opportunity to live this
that
way. So
kind of sucks, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's not a lot
I have
of
a lot
fun.
more sympathy for my mom. I was mentioning her earlier. I suspect has it. She will never get diagnosed, so that's okay. But, it's helped me like appreciate and be more patient with her as her child, who's now an adult and like functions differently and things like that.
Right.
So,
and it's kind of like
that's
you said,
a whole
having
different
compassion for each other.
So Aaron,
it's important.
I got a question, and then we'll probably start to wrap up. But what are some of the, I'll say some of the good things about having ADHD, and what are some of the things you'd like, you know, people who are in relationships with people or spend a lot of time with people who have ADHD, what are some things you'd want them to know?
Well, I'll answer the second question first because I've been trying to shout this from the rooftops, but like I just want everybody to notice that like we don't want to be bad at this stuff. We don't want to forget things. We don't want to like not live up to what we said we would do for you. We don't want to forget to text you back. Like we feel 10 times worse about it than you do. And like one thing that my partner does that I really appreciate and that we're both, I think, pretty good at this stage in our relationship is we both come into it with the understanding that the other person is doing their best.
Right.
Like we get upset with each other. We have arguments. We have disagreements. We're just like any other couple. But at the same time, when we approach it, we say, all right, I know that she's coming at it with her best. I'm coming at it with my best. We need to be two people from the same page working towards the same thing. And like, I'm not going to be your relationship coach, but at the same time, like that's a great understanding for every relationship is like not making the assumption that the other person is like, doesn't care. And that's why they're doing this. Like she knows that I care and it's easier obviously with a closer relationship. But if you literally make an understanding and say, hey, look, you're my friend and I care about you a lot. I just want you to know I struggle with this. And if I run into this situation, it's not because I don't care. It's because my brain let me down. And coming into things with that sort of understanding and perspective really helps make it easier because you're working in the right environment when you're talking to someone. You're not in an argumentative state.
Right. You're kind of like setting a level playing field.
Yeah, absolutely. And what was your first question again? Because I already forgot it.
What are some of the good things about having ADHD?
I mean, everybody is tired of hearing like, oh, ADHD is a superpower, because it's really not. It's like pretty debilitating and awful. But some of the things that I do really enjoy about having ADHD is, first of all, I am the calmest person in the room in a crisis situation. Like when panic is happening, plans are off, like bad things, good things, or just like stressful things, my brain for some reason is just like, oh, well, we can handle this. And it just gets into that mode. You know what I mean? And I immediately start being logical.
I want to take a guess at why that is. It's because your brain is in chaos regularly. And you are not fazed by this event.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, we're also so used to dealing with crisis mode, because like you get that mini anxiety crisis whenever somebody says something that you're like, oh God, what did I forget to do?
It's actually, it's disturbing.
Handling it.
It's almost calming when other people are panicking. You're like, oh, okay, cool. I can handle this. I'm comfortable here.
All on my level. Yeah. Oh man.
And like, because our brains lack dopamine so much, we are like the most pragmatic people ever, because your brain says, look, what is the fastest, simplest way to solve this problem? I don't have to think about it anymore.
Yeah.
You know? So like this, I mean, it gets me in trouble sometimes because my fiance sees every single little detail and needs to know the answers. I just need to know, will it work? Forget about the rest. So like my brain immediately looks for just the quickest solutions and starts actively working to get towards that as quickly as possible. And once I can solve the crisis, then I can stop, reflect, anxious, panic, and then I have time to be like, forget about things. But like I need to get to a point where the crisis is not actively happening in order to be able to stop and think about anything else. So my brain just immediately goes into crisis management. It goes through the steps. I've never thought more clearly. And then as soon as it's over, then the crisis can start in my brain. You know, I'll feel much worse about stuff after it rather than while it's happening.
Yeah. I used to be Go ahead, Jenna.
No, you're I'm just wondering, like, you're no, you. Yeah. You're not able to process in the moment either, because your brain
emotionally,
like you said, crisis management, and then once it's all said and done, then your brain can do the unraveling afterwards. Yeah.
I immediately go into like, solve this problem so you don't have to worry about solving this problem anymore. Like it just, your brain goes into like ultimate pragmatic, like step-by-step solutions mode, and you work through the issue, and then you can process the rest of it, the rest of the feelings and the emotions surrounding it. It's almost like a little bit of a lag or a delay. And then, there are times where I look back and I'm like, oh, maybe I could have done that better. And like, there's times where like, I may not like be sensitive to what's going on. Like if it's an upsetting situation, like I, to a fault, sometimes like won't think about how people are feeling during it. I'll just be like, all right, you do this, you do that, let's get this solved. It's like when you're watching one of those cop drama shows and they're like, you call 911, and like they're pointing at the people at the crime scene and like telling them all to do different things. But it's like, the situation is more, it's closer to home. It's not like a murder investigation. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. But you like, that's the person you want to have when things turn upside down. You need to have that one person who's going to be calm, cool, collected, and like, we are handling this situation. I'm giving other people tasks, because a lot of other people will go bystander effect. They'll just be like, like freeze, don't know what to do. Yeah. And then if you give them a task, then they'll feel, oh, okay, I can be helpful in this way. So
yeah. And it's like,
I would say that that's a super big pro of.
I think so. And I think like we would probably make great like 911 operators, you know what I mean? Like, because that's you're managing a micro crisis, like every phone call that you get. And like, I've spent a lot of my life working in call centers and managing in call centers. And like, I feel comfortable getting a phone call because it doesn't matter what's on the other end. I know that I have the ability to stop and figure it out. I don't know all the answers, but like the skill, I've always told people that I've managed, the skill is not knowing the answers. The skill is getting from where you are to the answer. It's the communication, it's the process, it's all of that stuff. I think we're naturally good at stuff like that. I mean, you ask me to like pay attention to something that I'm not interested in for like a solid hour, sorry, bud, can't do it. But like, I can solve your problems. Like, call me if you get in a car accident. I'll come help you out.
Yeah.
I'll be there. Yeah.
Yes.
So you have a website.
Yes, which is the ADHDproject.com. You can find a lot of info there. It's not, I mentioned that I sell the planners and other info, but it's honestly more of it is just like blog articles and resources and links and all that kind of stuff. Like if you've never, if this is kind of your introduction to ADHD and you're thinking like, oh, maybe I have it, there's like a self-assessment you can take to figure out how many of the symptoms you have. There's a guide to getting treatment, like step by step, how to figure out where you're at with the symptoms, how to talk to your doctor. And that's the one thing that like I've seen a lot of people do and that I've felt really the greatest about is that so many people have figured out that they've had ADHD through this and have actually started to get help for it. And whether or not they ever buy anything from me or spend $1, it doesn't matter because I've done my job and I've helped you now get on a better path for your life because I know how I was feeling beforehand and it sucked. And I feel, even though I'm still not where I want to be, I feel a lot better about it because I know I'm making progress. And that's really my goal at the end of the day is just help people.
Yeah, feeling much more positive. Where else can people find you? Plug anything that you would like.
Yeah, so I am on pretty much all of the social media platforms. It's either the ADHD Project or Aaron with ADHD. That's Aaron, like the sketch. Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. I think Facebook and TikTok are where a lot of people have seen me from because I don't have as many people on the others. But if you're on Pinterest, I have a Pinterest, like I write blog articles. If you go to any of those places and either click the link or if you go to the ADHD Project, I do have a twice a week newsletter that I send out through email. It's not just selling you things. It's all articles about like different skills and tools. Most recently I did like a 3-parter on ADHD and perfectionism. And I try and write with a different theme each week, which is like intention, inspiration, and action, and like 3 different parts that kind of make up, a full solid idea of progress for us with ADHD. So check it out there. I've gotten a lot of feedback that the newsletter has a lot of good practical info. And so that's what people end up sticking with. And there's a free ebook if you sign up for the newsletter. Again, I'm not going to sell you something every week. I might put a plug here or there, but mostly it's just about real practical info for you to use to actually manage your ADHD better and get closer to the life you want to live.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
That is really awesome.
Yeah.
And for all of our listeners, I hope you go spam as shit. Because for a few reasons. Number one, you probably all know at least one person with ADHD if you're listening to the podcast.
Us, yeah.
Number two, there are aspects of ADHD that affect everyone, even if you don't have it. And I think this is a large part of what causes so much dissatisfaction with individuals on a personal level daily is we're faced with problems and, the distress and the bad feelings and the panic, all that stuff that comes with it is because we either don't have the time, we don't take the time, or we don't have the time or we don't take the time to fully understand what the problem is. So anytime you're in a relationship with someone with ADHD, that's the cornerstone of most dysfunctional aspects of the relationship. Most of your arguments, your fights, your disagreements, whatever. And it's because I know for me, I have a really hard time communicating the things that I'm feeling, even though what I feel like the feelings are very accurate and appropriate, but it's very difficult for me to communicate those to Cassie sometimes. But yeah, people should go check it out and read the stuff because you'll be, I'm confident that if people read into understanding people with ADHD, they'll probably come up with something that they can apply themselves to help them live their own lives better too. So I think it's worth taking a look at.
I agree. Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate you welcoming me on the podcast. Happy to do a part 2 someday. Maybe we'll do
or something
like that.
Yeah. Next time it's going to be the what do you call it there? All like the bloopers of ADHD, the funny stories, and the and all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
things and stuff like that.
Yeah.
No, that'll be a fun one because I got I got some stories. But
okay, love it.
All right. Well, we'll be in touch, and everyone else, thanks for coming out. And you can go watch this on Aaron's YouTube, or you can go find Aaron's products and his information on his website, theadhdproject.com.
I will link everything below.
And we will talk to you all very, very soon.
Fantastic. Take care.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
All right, now it's